Katrina Anderson is with the Commonwealth Foundation, and she joins us this morning. She's kind of a specialist in the area of pensions, and she's with us here on WSBA. Good morning, Katrina. How are you?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Doing very, very well. And we wanted to talk about policy again this morning here in the state of Pennsylvania. We saw the first gubernatorial debate 2 nights ago, and one of the things that came up was the idea of public pensions. And I know you spend a lot of time on this. The question that came up the other night from Dennis Owens in that debate, he said, is the way we are funding public pensions a crisis now, or is it a problem now that could become a crisis? And, of course, Tom Corbett said it's a crisis right now. Tom Wolf said it's a problem now that could become a crisis. So I want to ask you this morning, where are we as far as public pensions here in the state of Pennsylvania? A lot of talk about it, not much action so far. Of course, the governor tried to push the legislature to do something. They don't want to do it. It's an election year, obviously, which means we don't do anything. But your thoughts on that this morning, Katrina?
I mean, it really is a crisis. And I think in Pennsylvania we have about 7 session days left to do something. And it really is crucial that we do it. I mean, if you're listening today and you care about skyrocketing pension costs, about your skyrocketing property taxes, then you should care about pensions, because school districts, the number one reason they're raising property taxes is actually because of pensions. And what we're seeing, if we don't do something, I mean, right now we're already seeing, school districts have to put more money into the pensions, and they're not able to put as much in for classrooms and other priorities. So it really is something we need to address this session before the legislators go home.
Now, there's no chance that they're going to do anything, is there?
I don't have a crystal ball, and I would never say there's no chance.
Okay.
They certainly don't want to. I mean, as you mentioned, it's an election coming up.
Yeah.
So that's why it is so important that people understand, I mean, this is draining Pennsylvania's budget, and you need a solution that's long-term. And so there's talk about, let Act 120 work. I mean, that's what Wolf said in that debate, is that, we've already done something. But that alone is not a solution. I mean, we've seen when they actually passed that, it's based on, if you understand pensions, it's based on assuming the market is going to have a certain rate of return.
Right.
And when they did that, I think it was 2013, PSERS actually, or 2012, they reduced their assumption. So they were assuming they were going to get 8% return on the market, and then they dropped it to 7.5%.
Right.
Well, changing your assumption that much added more than $5 billion to our pension debt.
And for people out there, PSERS is the Pennsylvania State Employee Retirement System. But go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, really when we're talking pensions right now, we're talking about it for the state employees, for teachers. But it's so important we do something so we can protect, the retirement that they have. Because when you look at Detroit, I mean, you see that recently teachers in Detroit had to vote to reduce their own pensions. That, when the state can't pay, or when the, areas can't pay, there are consequences. So if we do something now, we can protect it for those employees who have it, and then make a better system for future employees. So it's really common sense to do something now.
My laughing a few moments ago was not at the problem. My laughing was at the sadness of the fact that our legislators won't do anything here in an election year, and that's somehow the reason that they don't do anything. They won't ever say that because it's not the right thing to say, but it's sad to watch. When you hear Tom Wolf say the other night, it's a problem that could become a crisis, and you see the governor pushing, I mean, the governor is pushing an idea of a pension reform. What does he mean by a problem that could have become a crisis? The two of them, one of the things that happened was Corbett said the other night, well, we have funded it despite the fact that it's cost us dearly to fund it totally over the last several years during my administration. Tom Wolf said, basically, we haven't funded it well, but we need to keep on funding the pension system right now. Did you make any sense out of that when they said that the other night?
Well, I mean, first I would say, pensions right now, it's about 30% of payroll, and you'd think candidate Wolf would, with his background, understand that that's just not sustainable right now. I mean, it really is a crisis. And just to understand what's going on with pensions, the unfunded liability that we have on the state level, it's about $50 billion.
Right.
But more than half of that is because of things besides the stock market crash. So a lot of times people say, we just got into this because of the stock market. But really, a larger portion is because they did these benefit improvements that they couldn't pay for.
Right.
He is right that we've, lessened what the state pays in, and underfunding the system has added to it. And then kind of those expectations and not reaching them. So, I would say that, his idea, to just let it keep going isn't sustainable, because the current problem we got into is more than just the stock market. The pension system, it's just designed where it allows legislators to increase it in good times and underfund it in bad times.
Well, let me jump in on you there for a second. Yeah, let me jump in there for a second, because I think you made a really good point, and I was thinking about that a moment ago. You just hit it again. In other words, when you're funding it during really good times, you're making a bet that the good times are going to remain forever. That's the time it seems to me that you ought to build in some safeguards and some firewalls, right?
Right. I mean, I think it was maybe 13 or 14 years ago, we were having a surplus.
Right.
We had so much money in our pensions, and then we ended up where we are today, and we need to do that protection to ensure that taxpayers. I mean, here's the reality. My niece, Scarlett, she's about 3 now, but she's going to be almost 30 before we've paid off this pension liability we have right now. She's going to be paying into it because we've deferred costs. So we need to do something now to protect, those future generations as well as current teachers. So I would certainly say it is a crisis, and it's something that could be addressed if legislators look at it in these last session days.
We're talking with Katrina Anderson from the Commonwealth Foundation, somewhat of an expert here on pensions. When you look at the pension system right now, public pensions, it doesn't just stop with school districts. We also see cities, which are also, in the hole when they start out every term. Every time a new mayor steps in, we hear about, we're a third-class city, we're in the hole. We talk about funding pensions for firemen, police, all very important people. We thank them so much for their service. They do a great job. And yet at the same time, what is the better way to go here in your study of pensions so far, Katrina?
Well, what we've seen a lot of, major companies just throughout the last 10, 20 years start switching is to a 401k type system, called a defined contribution. So you know how much you're putting in, and you know how much the company is putting in, and you can expect that. And really, those have great benefits for many reasons, because, the portability that people like now, people are changing jobs, that goes with them. Where the pension, you have to stay in that position. And you can also create 401ks that really are designed to produce just as much income at retirement as a pension.
You know what's interesting about that, though? We have a lot of people, and I guess my simple question would be, why doesn't the government want to go to a 401k look when we see so many companies out there in the private sector having done that? And if they don't want to go to a 401k and realize that we have a pension problem that we can't fund, you talk about a defined contribution as opposed to a defined outcome all the time, because a defined outcome, we've got numbers changing all over the place in the front end. So if they understand all that, why are they so loath to go to either a 401k or some other hybrid of that?
It's unfortunate, because we've seen groups like the Pennsylvania State Education Association who've just been actively fighting against real pension reform. And you have to know, if you're really about protecting the teachers, students, that the school districts have the money they need, that you really be supportive of a long-term solution. So we've seen, kind of the special interests who I think just want to show they can prevent it, standing in the way of meaningful reform.
Yeah, because at some point in time, and maybe not in the near future, but some point in time, you're going to have zero. Isn't that, that's just a mathematical case, is it? And then no one gets a pension down the line if you don't have any money to put into it, right?
Well, and exactly. And there's a lot of misinformation. So, PSEA has been sending stuff to teachers saying, they're trying to take away benefits from those who are retired. That's not true. Right now the proposals are only new employees coming into the system who understand, the new agreement that they're going to be part of. So that misinformation causes confusion. And really, this is about protecting teachers. It's about, keeping property taxes from skyrocketing. It's about prioritizing money and good government reform. So I think those kind of interest groups are standing in the way.
Katrina, we're going to take a break. When we come back, I want to ask you, what are the best plans to solve it right now that you see out there? How long a process will it be? And does the government have the will to do it? Big questions for Katrina Anderson when we come back. She's from the Commonwealth Foundation, and she's here on the Gary Sutton Show on News Radio 910. WSBA. We'll be right back with Katrina. Welcome back to the Gary Sutton Show on WSBA. We're with Katrina Anderson, Commonwealth Foundation. And I won't call you a specialist, but you have an area of interest there with the pension and the pension crisis right now. Katrina, what are the best plans out there to solve it right now, in your opinion? I know you study these things all the time. We talked about the general idea of a 401k, but getting specific now as far as the legislature is concerned, what are the best plans there that they can consider right now?
I mean, right now the focus in Pennsylvania has been on two hybrid-type plans. One, the most attention is Representative Tobash.
Yes.
And so what it would do is create kind of a side-by-side hybrid where people would still have some portion of their money going to a pension, a defined benefit, and then another part being like a 401k. And so they do that because it thinks, you're keeping money to sort of transition us from one system to another, but lessening that uncertainty by having that component.
Now, how do they work that so that the pension isn't the same thing it is right now?
The way it's kind of capped is that when you have a certain amount of salary, it's going into a defined benefit.
Okay. And
you can fully earn that in 25 years. And then above that, you start going into a defined contribution plan. The other proposal out there is by Representative Glenn Grell, and that works. It's called a cash balance, but it works on paper by looking like a 401k, but all the money sort of pulled together. But I think what's really important for people to get is that we need to do something. I mean, I think there was a lot of momentum to try to push pensions, and we shouldn't let that stop. So, I mean, if you are reaching out, talking to your legislators, letting them know, I mean, their job is to represent and listen to the people who are speaking to them, and this should be a number one issue on the agenda in the remaining session days.
When you look at the process and how long it's going to take, I've seen some of the original proposals on dealing with this, and people are, looking years down the line that it's going to kick in. But I guess from a simplistic standpoint, what is the problem right now with saying, you know what, hands off the people that already have the benefits? Okay, I think we need to keep promises that we make, and that gives us confidence in our government. On the other side, if we say, hey, we got a new employee, we got new rules, this is the way it's going to be from here on out, is that wrong to be thinking that simplistically about it?
Well, and that's exactly what Representative Tovash's plan does, is that it's for new employees coming into the system. And
right.
We do that to ensure that employees, like you said, that are in right now, get what the benefits they were promised, so they don't end up like Detroit, where they're having to vote to decrease their own benefits. So you definitely can do that. I mean, the other part of it is that we do need to put more money into it, and we advocate kind of reprioritizing the spending to put more into the pension system right now.
So when we look at this whole thing, and I'm sure you're talking to legislators, and are they trending toward any particular plan of the two plans that you mentioned, the two kind of hybrid plans that you mentioned?
Well, in the House, we saw Majority Leader Mike Terzai really get behind this hybrid model from Representative Tobash.
Right.
I mean, we're seeing that momentum. I think you haven't seen exactly what the Senate would do if the House passed it, but we shouldn't let the uncertainty or not knowing what either chamber will do stop us from acting. So I would just keep encouraging people to say, hey, if you're tired of high property taxes, you need to address the pensions. If you want to protect teachers' current benefits, you need to address the pensions for future employees so that it's sustainable. It just needs to be a top priority.
I like the way you connected the two, though, because the idea that taxes and priorities are connected to this is very important. And I think teacher salaries are important. We don't want to, teachers are valued parts of the work community here. And yet at the same time, if we have part of that system, and I was part of that system for a while, if we have part of that system that is wrecking the rest of our economy, for all intents and purposes, and hurting the rest of the population, and taking away money that could be spent elsewhere and spent by the people in a little bit more of an authentic way, then we need to take a long look at that and fix that. I mean, every mayor I hear stepping into office says, oh my gosh, we got to take care of the pension obligations. Every school district is talking about that. So if that's the problem, why is it so hard for us, and I'll give you the final word on this, to step in and make corrections and to do something here that is going to fix it, you mentioned earlier, for the future? As well as now.
Also, this shouldn't be a partisan issue. I mean, it really is good government reform about protecting teachers, ensuring that new people coming in have the retirement. I mean, we want 100% of Pennsylvanians to have the retirement that they need when they're older. So I think this really is a number one issue for government to be addressing, and it can be done, as you said, because teachers are not responsible. I mean, they've been paying into the system, so we want to protect what they've had, but also ensure future generations are able to have a retirement as well.
So you better be on the line with your representatives and your state senators and all that good stuff to make sure that we are working hard to get this done correctly, right?
Absolutely.
And also stay up on it with people like you who can tell us a little bit more about that. Katrina, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Some very good insights, and we'll continue to follow what's being done or maybe not being done, unfortunately, with the pension right now. But we appreciate you being with us today. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Take care. Katrina Anderson with the Commonwealth Foundation here on the Gary Sutton Show.